What you should not do is develop your product, advertisement plans and recipes. When everything is ready, I still need to do the safety issues. That is probably a couple of years too late. I say the scientific stance that EFSA practices is the best in the world. So in the US, in Australia, and in Japan, in China, they all have their own procedures, but I'm pretty sure what EFSA does is the best in the world. There's a couple of requirements that you need to fulfill, that you have human studies showing the effect. A rat is not a human.
NutriScore is there to make the life of consumers easier.
The science behind Nutri-Score is meager.
Welcome to the podcast Tomorrow's Bite. And in the beginning, we always go into the part of getting to know the guest that we have in front of us. And could you share with us your early interest in chemistry, what led you to specialize eventually in food toxicology for your PhD? Because I went into your background and eventually now you are as a consultant working for companies on the regulatory side, but it all started as something else.
Formally, I'm a chemist, but no one knows. It's only what my diploma says. What is relevant for this interview, this podcast, is that I'm a toxicologist and I am a nutritionist. And that has a long history. I now have 41 years of professional experience, meaning that I graduated from university in 1983. And soon thereafter, I got a PhD position in food toxicology. I already did toxicology as one of the topics within my master's degree before, and I got interested in it. And I actually never left the area of food, nutrition, and toxicology. Over the years, I've been moving around across different employers. After my PhD at the Maastricht University in 1989, I enrolled into TNO, the Organization for Applied Scientific Research, where I worked for 10 years. I was around 5 years the head of the genetic toxicology and 5 years the head of the Department of Food Analysis. After 10 years TNO, I moved to industry. I've been a scientific and regulatory affairs manager in Unilever. I traveled the world. I was involved in a lot of scientific endeavors. After 5 years Unilever, I left again and I became employed at the National Institute for Public Health and Environment, RIVM, where I started as the head of the Center for Nutrition and Health. And here you can already see the moving in between toxicology and nutrition. And I was for around 7 years the head of the Center for Nutrition and Health. And the last 3 years I was senior scientific officer. In my RIVM days, I already started working for the European Food Safety Authority, EFSA, in Parma. I was 3 times 3 years a panel member, an external scientific expert to the panel on nutrition, dietetic products and allergies, mainly working on scientific substantiation of health claims and novel food dossiers. That will probably come back later on in this interview. After 9 years, 3 times 3 years, I had to stop because that was the maximum allowed. Soon thereafter, I got employed at EFSA because I already applied for the position as one of the directors in EFSA, which I got a couple of months after I had to stop as the panel member From there, by the end of 2015, I was one of the directors, which I did for almost 3 years. And the last 2 years in EFSA, I was a senior scientific officer until I stopped with EFSA by the end of 2020. So now almost 4 years ago. As I did like science so much, and I did not want to stop working, I started my one-person consultancy company in order to have, let's say, something to do, which I liked. And today I have the best job in my life. I liked all my jobs in the past. I liked EFSA a lot. It's a great institute. There's loads of good science there. But I wanted to go back to the Netherlands because while I was working for EFSA in Parma, Italy, my wife was living in the Netherlands, and I had to commute over the weekends to go back to the Netherlands and to see each other. And after 5 years, that's long enough. We calculated that we could afford stopping a regular position. So then going back to the Netherlands and becoming a private consultant was attractive. So that is what I'm doing now for almost 4 years, being a consultant in toxicology and in nutrition and in the combination thereof.
A short career, I would say. You have almost nothing in your CV. I would. I would say no, but one thing that of course is it really draws our attention is that you said it. You really like science. You really like to be a scientist. And maybe that's a broad question. Maybe, but when or how did you get so into the science or into food toxicology, for example? That is the part that you've been studying the most.
Yeah, in fact, that is how things go. When I did do my university studies, my master's, I was not aware of toxicology. I needed to find a place to find a topic in my education, and for some reason I got into the department of toxicology, and that interested me. And in fact, I never left that topic. Soon thereafter, when I had my master's in '83, I applied for a position as a PhD student in the area of food toxicology at the Maastricht University. I got that position. I was very happy with it. It went very well with my PhD. After a bit more than 4 years, I graduated, and in fact, that got me into the area of on the one hand, toxicology, and on the other hand, nutrition. And I think particularly the combination thereof is interesting. It's also a bit unique. There are not many people that are certified toxicologists and certified nutritionists, but I'm one of the few of them, and that gets my interest. Basically, it brings me to science, and I like scientific endeavors. I like discussion science. I like to use science in order to make progress. And I hope that I can contribute a little bit to make it a better scientific world.
Was there maybe any moment in the past when you were younger, like, okay, this is the direction I really want to go?
Yes and no. Let's say the basics is there, starting with chemistry already, and rolling into a topic of toxicology, and getting a PhD in food toxicology. And that is something that kept keeping my interest. During my career, I decided to strive for a little bit more. Of course, I wanted to continue in science, but I wanted to do 4 different things. That is what I have never told you before. But let's say I wanted to, at some point in time, to lead a bigger group. Doing more. I did that twice. I was head of department at TNO. I was head of the Center for Nutrition and Health at the RIVM, and I was head of department at EFSA. So I did that twice. I also decided that I wanted to work for industry once, and I've done that, let's say, one time really when I was working for Unilever, and 2 times working for industry indirectly while at TNO and now as a private consultant. I also wanted to work abroad at some point in time, so moving to another country and working from there. No, I also ticked that box because I've been working in Italy and Parma for 5 years. And the last thing I strived for is I wanted to become a professor once. No, I resulted in that aspect also twice. I'm a professor at the University of Ulster in Northern Ireland since 2009. And I'm also a professor at the Danish Technical University in the Copenhagen area since 2021. So all 4 boxes ticked.
Yeah, it shows that everything is possible.
If you want, I don't know if it's possible, but at least I succeeded. And yeah. I think if you want to achieve something, you should go for it. And I did it, and I was successful, and happily ever after.
I see it in the whole career flow. But what have been some of the most significant challenges you have faced in the food safety and public health in your career?
What I think is actually the combination of the two. On the one hand, I'm a toxicologist working on food safety, arguing when are foods, ingredients or nutrients, when are they safe, which actually arguing towards an intake that should be low enough not to have any adverse effects. That's how a toxicologist argues. Toxicologists do not want anything to happen. On the other hand, I'm also a nutritionist, and a nutritionist argues the other way around. For a nutritionist, you need something to happen, and if the dose is not high enough for something to happen, nothing will happen. So it's two worlds of thinking. A toxicologist towards shall not happen, a nutritionist towards shall happen. And these worlds need to be brought together in one go. And that's what I like. I think that's where the scientific challenges are. And then come to a trade-off, where is optimal health.
Well, your expertise. And one of them is around novel food. And I found like a month ago around, like we got the first EU's first application for cultivated meat. It was for French foie gras. There was a Paris startup gourmet one that wants to have European cell-grown pate in the market by 2026. So this was a first application, of course. And the concept of lab-grown meat was already introduced in 2010. I know it's for sure for Mark Post live on television. Now we are 14 years later and we got our first application for the EFSA, basically. Mm-hmm. And this shows that the regulatory process of novel foods like lab-grown meat can take really long. So why does it take so much time for novel foods like lab-grown meat on the regulatory side?
I think in this example, I didn't hear that they submitted the dossier to formally to the commission. You don't submit to EFSA, you submit to the commission, and after validation, the commission sends on to EFSA. Yeah, why it is taking them so long? You should ask Gourmet why they didn't do it earlier. Apparently, the dossier was not ready enough to be submitted. For novel foods, you have an applicable regulation. That's currently the 2283/2015, which manages the safety information that needs to be offered needs to be described in a dossier before it can result in authorization. After publication of the regulation, EFSA has published its guidelines on what should be contained in a dossier. And that was first published in 2016 with some recent updates due to the transparency regulation. And the next update is expected for September 2024. So that can be any time now. A draft has been published. And actually the principle is if you as a food business operator want to bring a novel food or novel food ingredient to the market, you must make a dossier, submit the dossier to the commission, have it evaluated by EFSA, and if EFSA considers that the novel food or novel food ingredient is safe under the proposed conditions of use, authorization by the commission and the member states can follow. So then you can ask yourself, where is the delay? Now, on the one hand, I think with the food business operator who needs to prepare the dossier, that can take a long time because you need to provide information on identity, on production process, on composition, on specifications, on effects versus nutrition versus absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion, toxicology, allergenicity, information on use levels and calculation of potential intake. So there's a whole lot of information that you need to provide. Yeah. So then you ask the food business operator, what did you do? And okay, but once dossier is ready, you submit it to the commission, and then the commission has a short amount of time, around 30 days, to validate the dossier, then send it on to EFSA, who does another validation of about the same time. Once the dossier is found valid, and there it can go swift, but there can also be iteration between the applicant and the commission or EFSA to provide more information. But once the dossier is valid, EFSA has 9 months to do its risk assessment and come to the conclusion that the novel food or novel food ingredient is safe under the proposed conditions of use or not. Pending that period of 9 months that EFSA has available to do the scientific evaluation, there can be clock stops if EFSA has extra questions. They can ask the applicant, and then the EFSA can get an answer from the applicant maybe in a day, but also sometimes more studies need to be done, and then it is, let's say, weeks, months, years before the necessary information can be delivered by the applicant to EFSA. So at some point in time, EFSA will have sufficient information to draw its final conclusion, and that is then published in a scientific opinion. Then the work for EFSA is done, and then it goes back to the Commission and the member states to take a decision on authorization. So you add up all the years first for making the dossier, then submitting it to the Commission, having it evaluated by EFSA, and then taking a decision by the Commission and the member states on authorization. So maybe in this case that you referred to, which I haven't seen myself yet, it is 1.5 decades. So, I think the majority of the time is on the onus of the applicant.
Tell better, like this scheme in the process. What is the role then of the Commission? Because I think that more or less a lot of people in the industry knows that the role of EFSA is assessing whether this is safe or not. But what is the role of the Commission?
The European Commission and the member states, they take a decision on authorization. They are the risk managers.
Yeah.
So at the start, they take in the dossier and see whether it's a valid dossier. Then EFSA is asked to do the risk assessment, and they only provide scientific advice. They don't take any decision on authorization because there can always be what is called other legitimate factors that can allow or disallow the market introduction. But that is at the decision of the Commission and the member states. So it's always the interplay between risk assessment and risk management. That's a classical triangle, actually: risk assessment, risk management, and also risk communication. And these 3 tasks should be clearly separated. Know what you are responsible to do and do not do the other things.
This I actually know because I studied in the masters that the Commission was involved, but that does also make me think about the political influence that can be sometimes around the decision itself, since of course EFSA provides you the science, but then there's somebody else that can do something aside from the science. I guess that I think it's quite related to the next question we have, because if we're sticking to the lab-grown meat, when it was released that the US already give like the pass for lab-grown meat to be considered as safe by the FDA, or however they qualify it in the USA, there were countries immediately, like Italy was there, Hungary as well, I think, that immediately talked about potential bans to this lab-grown meat, something that in Europe is not even approved yet. So lacking still for an EFSA assessment of whether this is safe or not, this made us think about what does it mean that something is approved by EFSA. I mean, if something is approved by EFSA, means that there is science enough or sufficient to say that this is something safe, or there's still a shade of doubt that can taken from it.
What I think is relevant to realize, EFSA does not approve. EFSA takes a scientific decision answering the question, is it safe under the proposed conditions of use? It's up to the risk managers, which can be the European Commission and the member states, to decide on what to do with the EFSA scientific advice. Obviously, if EFSA concludes it's not safe under the proposed conditions of use, authorization will not follow. But the inverse is not fully true. If EFSA concludes it's safe under the proposed conditions of use, there can be other legitimate factors under which the Commission or the Member States can decide otherwise. Let's say in the area of cultured meat, Italy has already said we do not approve, not even looking at the science, not even listening to the science, but they are politically apparently against it. Whether it will hold under applicable regulation, that's not my task. I'm just a scientist. And I've seen that in other countries, like in the US and in Singapore, there have been a few cases of cultured meat examples where the Singaporeans and the US authorities were in favor of having this into the market. The formal procedures are a little bit different, and I think it's a bit beyond the purpose of this interview to explain all the differences there. But it can be a little bit faster there than in the EU. Fine, okay. So there it can be brought to the market. So the science was in support and risk managers were allowing it.
Then my question also goes to the EFSA assessment. The EFSA assessment says that something is safe or that something is not proven to not be safe. I don't know if I can make myself understand. Like when a trial, you can tell that somebody is innocent, or you cannot tell if he was guilty.
Actually, it's a bit binary. It's safe or it is not safe under the proposed conditions of use.
Yeah. Okay.
And the applicant proposes something, and EFSA says yes, no, safe.
It's a little bit clearer. But then, okay, then I believe that it's really interesting to look at this exercise of the EFSA of the novel foods from the side of a startup, for example. And I think that this you as consultant, probably that is maybe kind of the projects that you're managing. So if a person that, for example, starts their new business with an ingredient that they just patented a process completely new to get like a certain ingredient to use, what are the first things that you would recommend this startup, the first steps when looking to the novel food application?
Yes, I think one of the first things that an applicant should do is trigger the novel food regulation if applicable. Not everything is novel food. And if something is not novel food, there is no reason to recur to the novel food regulation. So the first thing is to decide, is this novel food, yes or no? There is auxiliary regulation to the full-fledged novel food regulation, where you can ask the member states, is this yes or no novel food? And there are examples, and I've seen a couple of in my practice, where there were good arguments that something that was developed by a food business operator was not novel food. Which means that the food business operator does not need to make another food dossier, so does not need to go to the Commission and to EFSA to have it evaluated. It is not 100% the same as it is safe, but if it's not novel food, let's say other food laws apply under the general food law. So one of the first things I would do is map a procedure, what to do versus safety. Let's put it the other way around. What you should not do is do a lot of, and I've seen this kind of examples. What you should not do is develop your product, come with whatever you like it, advertisements and plans and recipes, and say, okay, and when everything is ready, I still need to do the safety issues. That is probably a couple of years too late. Because it's not a quickie, and you've seen the example yourself of the foie gras from cultured meat. Apparently it took, what did you say, Jaco, 15 years from the initial idea until submission of the dossier. So it will take...
It's mainly around the whole concept of lab-grown meat that it was introduced like 14 years ago.
Okay. Yeah. But okay, the message still stands. If you want to develop something, if it has an air of being novel, take care of safety from an early stage onwards. Don't do it at the rear, because there's a possibility that it may fail. You'd better know that up front. Actually, the same applies with health claims, completely different topic. Don't finish your marketing until the health claim is approved. Also start here at an early stage. Because if you're not successful in safety or efficacy, it is a game stopper.
It is indeed. And then the risk assessment of a food and an ingredient includes, like hazard identification, characterization, exposure assessment, right?
There's two different lines. It's hazard identification and characterization, actually looking at what is the effect, for good or for bad, and at what dose levels happens what, or inverse, at what dose levels does something not happen anymore. That's the one line. If you combine the information on hazard with doses versus the actual intakes, so exposure, then you combine it into risk characterization. So this is the classical rate. And that works for food safety issues, for toxicology, but actually equally well, it works for nutrition. Also for your nutrition, you need to identify the effects. You need to identify what happens across dose levels. And at some point in time, it doesn't happen anymore because the doses are too low. You combine with the exposure, and then you characterize the effect or characterize the risk.
This is interesting because my head goes around like, okay, but then what kind of research is going to back this up? Like, where are the limits that the EFSA says like, okay, this is legit. This shows us that in the end, it's not a risk for human health. You would like to have clinical studies in that part. You would like to have
systemic reviews.
Not necessarily. EFSA will look at original data. So do not rely on reviews. Of course, if they are providing pertinent information, you should bring it up because you're responsible to bring up all the pertinent information. But do not rely on the evaluations by others. And that's also what EFSA will do. And in a dossier, it can be very diverse. Of course, the basics, I've given that sequel before. It's identity, it's stability, it's composition, it's production methods, and all these data leading into specifications. So actually describing what is the novel food, or what is the food under consideration of a health claim, etc. What is it precisely? If you can't do that, the rest will fail. That's it. Then you need to go for intakes. Where will people be eating this? How much? Via what routes? Calculate intakes, means and maximum across age and gender groups, populations, etc. And then looking at the effects for good or for bad. Food safety for bad, health claims for good, and trying to get a grip on what happens across those levels. And then you can come to an overall scientific conclusion. This is safe under the proposed conditions of use, or when you're looking at health claims, this is effective under the proposed conditions of use. It's the same. It's opposite thinking, but this is how it works. And start these considerations early on.
I guess that this may be one of the common mistakes of several companies that they, as you mentioned, that they say, well, this is one of the last things I need to do because I need to focus first on, I don't know, my business or my. Mm-hmm. Is there any other mistakes that you believe that could help companies to save time around this, or save money even?
Yes, but I would start at an early stage and try to make a convincing. We're talking novel foods now. for novel foods, try to come with a convincing argument that it's safe under the proposed condition of use, and do the argumentation early, do the research early, and try to find ways to achieve this. And maybe you can come to a conclusion, yes, it would probably be safe, but let's not put my ingredient into all the foods that I can imagine, thereby increasing the potential dose, but let's limit the application in order to have also the overall intake limited. So it's iteration. So do your homework, but also do your homework together with others that have experience.
It's a good one. We have to move on forward, but actually I want to ask Long one thing on this, is that let's move to another expertise that you have, and you already mentioned that one. It is about the health and nutrition claims. And the first question that already comes up in my mind is like, what are the key factors that determine whether a health or nutrition claim can be legally be made on a product here in the EU?
Yeah, that's also a simple question, and I can give you a simple answer because we have an applicable regulation here. That's the 9024/2006, which governs under what conditions a health claim can be practiced on a food or food ingredient. Here, what you do as a food business operator, again, you make a dossier. Dossier is being submitted to the Commission, and after validation, the Commission submits the dossier for EFSA for doing its scientific evaluation, reports back in a scientific opinion, and the Commission takes a decision on authorization. So that concept is the same. When looking into the science behind health claims, EFSA will ask three basic questions, and you will need to meet an adequate answer on all these three questions. The first one is similar to novel foods. Identify the identity of the food or food ingredients. Describe it in detail. So, identity. The second one, you need to provide evidence that the effect that you claim is beneficial for human health. That may seem obvious. It is obvious, but if it is not a health claim, it cannot fall under that regulation. So you need to identify that something is beneficial for health. And the third one, that may be the most complex one, but don't ignore the former two. The third one is that there needs to be firm scientific evidence obtained in humans that the effect is really there. And that is probably the reason where most, if not all, where most of the health claims will probably fail. The absence of firm scientific evidence.
So why do most of the claims fail in that part? It's basically because it is very ethical wise, you cannot do easy research on human to say specifically this ingredient helps you to reach X health outcome, right?
Yeah, but it can mean that the science has not been done. Okay, if the science has been done, there is something to do, but it can also mean that the effect is not there. We've seen many claims in the past where, let's say, claims are attached to ingredients or to food for magnificent outcomes, etc. It can happen that the effect is just not there. And if the effect is not there, you will not be able to prove it. Never, ever. It's not just an effort, let's go on and on and on until it works. No, it doesn't work that way. So it may not be there. If it still is there, you need to do a very good scientific study, or actually two studies in humans to prove it.
So this works, and also about how food companies approach to these, when the approach to try to comply with EU health claim regulations. And my question is really similar to the one I did with the novel foods. It's like, what can companies do better in order to meet the challenges? It's also a matter of preparation, just as before.
Oh yeah, actually yes. Do your homework at an early stage. Don't start with marketing and advertisements, etc., because that may be far too late. Maybe far too early. So look at the literature, think, and then start making a route towards a adequate dossier, realizing that the effect may not be there. Yeah. Okay, and if the food or the food ingredient does not do what you want it to do, you will never have health claims.
Food business operators will tend to always think that all these processes are slow, are costful, they get a lot of money. From your personal point of view, do you think that the process could be improved in a sense, or right now it's just perfect or the most perfect thing that we can have?
I say the scientific stance that EFSA practices is the best in the world. So that is very good. Of course, it can always go faster. If you put more money in it, if you put more people behind it, etc., it can go swifter. Yeah, but there's limits to this, and that is managerial. Yeah. So, let's say there's a couple of these regulations across the world, not only in Europe, also in the US, in Australia, and in Japan, in China, etc. They all have their own procedures. Sometimes they are very strict. Sometimes they are a bit less strict in the health outcomes and the scientific evidence that needs to be supported. But I'm pretty sure what EFSA does is the best in the world. It's the highest standard, even though I contributed to it myself a lot, but it's the best.
But precisely because of that, you have to talk from the experience. You don't have to talk just because you're a European, for example.
And you sent us also beforehand some papers. And one of the papers you also discussed the rigorous requirements for substantiating health claims in the EU. And could you share insights on how the regulatory environment has evolved recently?
Yeah, and not so much recently. The regulation is in place since 2006, and it has not significantly evolved since then, apart from some requirements under the transparency regulation, meaning that all data will be open, etc. So actually, the developments over the years has been a big EU project by the end of the 1990s. It's called FUFOS. I was not even involved in that. I was too young in the days. Thereafter, there has been another EU project called PassClaim, the process for the scientific substantiation of health claims and how to do that. I was deeply involved in that project. That was concluded in 2004. Soon after, I got into EFSA as an external scientific expert in the Nutrition and Dietetic Products Analogy panel, trying to develop a system for the scientific evaluation of health claims, actually using the same scientific thinking as was put down in the EU project. That's not surprising because it is also covering science and going after scientific requirement for health claims. So basically, the system has not significantly changed since it was applied from the time that EFSA started evaluating the food health claims around 2008, 2009. EFSA did around 3,000 health claims. The avalanche was over after 3-4 years. Now there's an occasional next dossier being evaluated. But the scientific stance of EFSA stands since then. And I think it's applauded by many that EFSA is critical while scientifically correct. It's the highest standard in the world, and I'm very proud of it to be having been able to contribute to a little bit to it.
To another topic of discussion that we believe that is really interesting, also for the industry, is that you are a strong critical voice against, because the NutriScore is there to make life of consumers easier and healthier, right? That is the actual role.
Yeah. Basically, I'm basically not against Nutri-Score. I am in favor of good science, and that is good. I've been opposing the Nutri-Score, not because of the Nutri-Score, but because the science behind Nutri-Score is meager. And I published a couple of papers in this area. The first one was published in, I think, in 22, where I, together with a collaborator, Dr. Peters, made a scientific appreciation of the Nutri-Score system along the lines of scientific substantiation of health claims as it is done by EFSA, realizing that the Nutri-Score system was never submitted to EFSA to be evaluated from a scientific perspective. But as a scientist, of course, you are free to study your own areas of interest. And what I did together with my collaborator is we put forward a theoretical health claim on the Nutri-Score system. I'm not 100% sure what how we phrased it. That is, I've written that down. Nutri-Score as a front of package labeling system results in an increased purchase of health foods by consumers. And we proposed that as a potential health claim. It could have been submitted to EFSA, but they never did it. And we started doing the scientific evaluation as EFSA would, or at least could do it. And actually we found 3 results with respect to the identity or the description of the system. I say, okay, that is sufficiently laid down. It can be undisputable, be repeated by others, etc. So the first box is ticked. We also found that the Nutri-Score has the potential to be beneficial for human health. And that's what you say, Andras. Yes, it has the potential. And then we looked at studies that should support the purchase of these type of food by consumers. And actually, there it failed. It failed completely, because there are not good studies supporting the purchase of this in real life situations. The potential, yes. There have been some studies. Some of them have been conducted by the developers of Nutri-Score. Other studies have been executed by others. But the evidence in support of a change in purchase behavior by consumers was not there. And then we could easily say, suppose this would have been submitted to EFSA. EFSA would have concluded, sorry, cause and effect relationship has not been established. So that's why we published the paper. It's not intended to criticize Nutri-Score. It is intended to support good science. Moreover, a couple of years later, actually at the start of this year, we published, my collaborator and I published another paper looking at what scientific papers are around to support the Nutri-Score system. And actually what we found is there's many papers that are in favor of the Nutri-Score, the majority of which is written by the developers of Nutri-Score. We also found out that if scientists are evaluating the Nutri-Score system without any links to the developers of Nutri-Score, most studies come out negatively. So we published that paper first. This was heavily criticized by the developers of Nutri-Score, who completely disagreed with our conclusions, and they found out. I need to read out the exact results. Let's say we found that if authors are affiliated with Nutri-Score, that 51 out of 56 studies came out positively, and the authors did not, the developers did not agree with it. They said that 49 out of 49 studies were in favor. On the other side, when looking only at authors that are not affiliated with the Nutri-Score developers, my collaborator and I found that the majority of studies found unfavorable results. The developers of Nutri-Score also criticized that and found actually the same effect, that if authors are not affiliated with the developers of Nutri-Score, most of the studies are unfavorable towards the system. And we published that. So here again, I'm not criticizing Nutri-Score, but I'm criticizing the claims behind Nutri-Score, and that is a plea for doing good science. There is no shame in doing good science.
I am curious.
And this is what drives me.
No, that is it's really noble. Like the actual to prove that actually like the science or the claims that are doing, like using the EFSA method is actually quite an interesting story, I have to say. But I'm just wondering, like one of the questions I have is how did you check how the studies of Nutri-Score differed from the ones I'm talking about the method, the methodology used and the model used, how they were built in comparison to the ones who were not favored by affiliation?
Yeah. We did evaluate those studies, but that would take an interview of a couple of days rather than 1 hour and 5 minutes. So we try to compare the one study versus the others. There's also differences between studies.
Yeah, of course.
We looked at the general stance and the outcome. Favorable, yes or no, and done by authors that are or are not affiliated with the developers. And we found a significant publication bias there.
Quite, I guess, provocative question, but I'm not going to make because, sometimes science, when there is interest behind it, can drive the people to do things that they shall not. But we're not going to make those accusations here. I believe.
Yeah. And I will stay a science. I like a good science. I'm very proud, for instance, that we have a very good system now in the scientific evaluation of novel food safety. Fine. I'm very proud that I contributed to scientific substantiation of health claims in Europe, which actually led that grossly maybe 1 out of 10 health claims submitted found sufficient scientific support. That is good. It's good science to do this. It's a lot of work, but I'm very happy that we did it in EFSA.
That's good.
It contributes to science, it contributes to nutrition, and as I said, I'm proud to have been able to contribute to this thinking in Europe.
So 1 out of 100 health claims. It is There is one thing that I would like still to ask around the health claims, which is for me still not very clear, is that basically what is the science backing up these health claims? How does it look like? Like, where does the research consist of? You said it needed to have two.
There's a couple of requirements that you need to fulfill. The most relevant in this respect is that you have human studies, basically human intervention studies, informally at least 2, showing the effect.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have those human studies, the claim will fail. And sometimes I speak out at conferences, etc. People have we found magnificent results in rats or in mice, and then my conclusion would be great for the rats. Okay, fine, but a rat is not a human, so you need to prove the evidence in humans.
Yeah, and that transition is quite hard, right? I mean, it is
of
hard
course.
to do.
It looks so attractive to do in vitro studies and see that something is working in your test tube. Fine for the test tube, but that is something different from fine for humans.
Yeah, it is for me. Like, I understand the good side of the fact that I also know that it is just almost impossible for a lot of food ingredients to get certain health claims because of the research that is required in humans.
Yeah. Actually, it could be one of 2 reasons, or both, a combination of both. The first and for all is it's not working. If it's not working, you can never do a study or a series of studies that prove that it's working, because the effect may not be there. If the effect does exist, it will be a tough job to come with decent scientific work to support the study. Yeah, so it's not a quickie. It's not a quick win.
No,
but it's a plea for doing good science.
Yeah. And what are then the steps that I need to take if it has an effect?
Mm-hmm.
So it is like,
making the dossier, paying attention to the characterization. What is it? What is the composition? What's the identity, etc. The same as with novel foods. Find evidence, describe evidence that the effect claimed is beneficial for human health, and then going for the real proof, which can be studied by yourself. But you also need to go into the literature to see what others have written in a certain area already. So it's a lot of work. A good dossier requires a lot of work and a lot of money.
I can imagine. And another thing that you have your expertise on is basically another thing that you have your expertise on is food supplements.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to I want to discuss this topic because nowadays supplements or food supplements, the consumption or consumers is increasing, like basically. People are more.
Mm-hmm. This can be actually very simple. Food supplements legally are foods, and they fall under the same regulations as normal foods. So if they are new, they need to be safe. Could trigger another food regulation. If you want to have a health claim on your food supplements, you need to come with firm scientific evidence under the health claim regulation. Otherwise, you're not allowed to say it. So that is, it's a food supplement, a food ingredient, pick and eat, but they must follow the same regulation.
But then still, as a consumer, I am very surprised by the amount of like food supplements and everything that has several claims on it. Are already in names and stuff like it.
That's the interplay between scientific requirements, what's on the market, and how is the market enforced. In EFSA, there is no role for enforcement of the regulation. For me, as a scientist, no role in enforcement of the regulation. It comes down to the National Food Safety Authorities. In the Netherlands, we have the NVWA. That has its task to enforce applicable regulation, take action if they think that public health or anything else is in jeopardy. That's policing the regulations. So that's that question is very simple.
And it is indeed very simple.
And I know there is a lot of claims on the market that are not authorized. There may be some novel food on the market that formerly have never gone through the novel food regulation. I published a paper on that already in 2008 or 9, gray area novel food. So there are ingredients or foods that escape either intentionally or non-intentionally, that escape the applicable regulations.
Yeah. And then as consumer, you have no idea that it skipped that part.
No. Consumers will not realize it.
To the future, how do you see the role of policy and regulation evolving in response to new challenges in the food industry?
Well, I like that question. And that brings me back to the start of my expose about an hour ago. I'm a toxicologist and a nutritionist. And as a toxicologist, I have been trained to argue towards something does not happen. Diet food shall be safe. And that works. We have EFSA in Europe. We have similar entities in other places in the world. And our food is as safe as it has never been before. So, job well done. On the other hand, I'm also a nutritionist, and I want to have things done by food. And that brings me in the area of health claims, where the dose needs to be high enough in order to elicit an effect. So as a toxicologist, I argue towards absence of effect. As a nutritionist, I argue towards presence of effects. The combination of these two disciplines that hardly meet together is called risk-benefit assessment or integrated risk-benefit assessment. And I've been working in that topic already for 20 years. I'm even a professor of risk-benefit at Danish Technical University in Copenhagen. And this is what I like best, in order to have informed decisions on the basis of real scientific evidence. And here we should realize, so we could realize that utter safety may not be something that we strive for, but optimal food safety is something that could be better than trying to get rid of all the potential dangers in our food. So here it goes a little bit quick now, but the basic paradigm in food safety is saying is, if it's not safe, it's not food. Okay, that works. So that is the reason behind organizations like EFSA and National Food Safety Authorities. Thy food shall be safe. I would go one step further to food safety 2.0, if I may say so. I would say if it's overall beneficial, it is good food. And maybe you find a quote for a presentation on your website that says this is the one that you could pick. I think if it's overall beneficial, this is something we should strive for. There's always some risks with food, but if the benefits outweigh the risks, and we can calculate it, there are tools to calculate what is the overall benefit in one currency. I did, together with my collaborators at RIVM in 2008 already, that's quite a while ago, we calculated what would be the public health benefits and risks of fortification of flour for making bread with folic acid. And we calculated indeed there are some public health risks, coming down to masking of vitamin B12 deficiency, let's say some increases in colorectal cancer. But we also calculated that there are clear benefits of fortification of bread with folic acid, in particularly spina bifida, and also some other forms of colorectal cancer. We calculated that the overall public health benefits certainly outweigh the public health risks if fortification would follow. The government in the Netherlands has seen this report. They decided, okay, we will not fortify because of other legitimate factors, exposing the entire population to something that they may not want or may not need. Half of the population will never get pregnant because they're male, etc. So that's other legitimate reasons. So, but we were able to calculate exactly, or let's say not exactly, precisely, that the public health benefits would be more beneficial than adverse. And that could be, let's say, a better proposition to take a risk assessment decision, a risk management decision on the basis of informed scientific expertise.
And how is the process of conducting a risk-benefit assessment for food products?
Actually, the same. You do the safety part, as I have outlined for the general food safety, for novel foods, etc. And you do the benefit part along the lines of thinking for health claims. At the end of the day, you work towards one currency. You compare apples with apples and not apples with oranges. Yeah. and one of there's a couple of parameters that you can use. You can count the incident cases of disease. You can, what is more popular is disability adjusted life years, but that goes quite deep for the purpose of this interview. But there are tools and there are currencies where you can compare likes with likes.
And then the ultimate goal was enhancing public health, right? So, like, yes. For instance, the thing what I'm also now thinking about, this kind of method could also be, well, it needs maybe to see it broaden with the challenges that we also have around climate change. And that's why you also have a lot of new food ingredients coming up to replace animal proteins, because we know the benefit on climate for that if we replace it with plant proteins, alternative ones. And that I'm more thinking, like, is there any model that even looks as broader as, like, okay, this product, enhanced product, will help public health in this sense, but what if we continually damage the planet, that also has an indirect effect on human health in a sense.
Yeah.
Like
It
when
can
is
be.
the incorporation of climate in regulation on taking the steps of approving ingredients or food products, because in the end it may help us in overall enhancing public health and decreasing the risk.
Yeah. I think this is a good reflection, Shako, good thinking. The techniques are available. And of course, it comes down to fine tuning the question. That's one of the most complex problems in integrated risk benefit. Formulate a good question, defining two scenarios, the one scenario with the other. Sometimes people go only for one question, do me the risk benefit of eating fish, etc. That will fail. That's an impossible question to answer. You need to identify, what if I exchange 2 portions of meat a week with 2 portions of fish meat. That's a risk benefit. So problem formulation. Likewise, it will also apply to incorporating more areas like environment, etc. But there the challenge is identify the right questions and then start working. It will be possible. It's complex. It may be uncomfortable because I'm only doing risk benefit of food safety and nutrition, and they're giving in to food safety issues in order to achieve more benefits is already a challenge. Not only scientifically it will be able to answer, but also politically. They need to go for what is optimal for nutrition. That's why if you want my quote, I said food safety 2.0 if it's overall beneficial, it is good food.
In the end, that is the conclusion. Just going around reflections for very short career, as we mentioned before.
Only 41.
You have found the most rewarding of working in food safety and nutrition?
I think the most. I'm very proud of the system around scientific substantiation of health claims. I've been working for many years in that area, defining the scientific criteria, writing it down in EFSA guidance, and then starting to apply it. I'm very proud of it. But I'm equally proud in working with others in the area of integrated risk-benefit assessment. This is new. We don't think like this, and I would like to improve the world, change the world, and improve science. So these are two topics that I'm pretty proud of. I have still many decades to go, fingers crossed.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good movement. I also believe in that sense that we have to. I think that a lot of things or a lot of, let's say, players in the industry are very short looking. Like I just want to know X effect on this, but we need to see it much broader. Like eventually the challenges are also more complex. So we need more complex lunch. And answer, we come to a closing to this, but before I finish up, we always give the guest that we have the opportunity to ask a question to us. So this is your chance.
Okay. I didn't think of that before, but maybe as a question back, what will happen with this interview or podcast, or you call it, and how will you contribute to making it a little bit a better world?
Well, what will happen with this episode and podcast? This will be published worldwide, hopefully, and hopefully you get then listeners in all different countries, which opens already for a lot of people, if they listen to so far to the episode, open them up to also broaden their perspective around. So get a more clear view on how the regulatory process goes in the EU on certain expertises like that you had. So on the novel food side, on the health claim side. And I think the last part, what you said and what we discussed on, is that it also needs, because we need a more broader vision for the complex issues also in the science part. And I know that there's people in the regulatory field also listening to this. And founders of companies that are struggling now maybe in their regulatory process. So that is something that this episode will add. What the podcast and where we want to bring the change is basically sharing this knowledge that with people that are working on a better future to accelerate the change that is needed.
Okay.
And I think that is my answer.
Really nice answer. I have little to add to it. I would say that we see that there is a gap on these food industry communications. There is food industry magazines, websites, and they're, according to their goals, probably they do a fantastic job. We're not gonna get into there, but we believe that it's lacking a platform that in some way foresees more for the change and the growth and the development of the food industry better than for the part or the industry or the industry part. So we hope that with these episodes, with this knowledge that we get incredible guests like you, Hans, we have the chance to make available for everybody that has internet the possibility to understand better what is how does the food industry looks like, what are the pitfalls, what are the mistakes that they maybe are making, and that not everybody has the chance to have access in their network to a person that can tell them these things. So I believe that with, as Sako said, with this we are helping people that has a true intention of making a change to get new tools and new knowledge.
Okay. So that sounds laudable. So I look forward to seeing the final edited version appearing on the internet.
Nice. We too as well. There's only like one question left.
Yeah.
And that is Hans. Oh, go.
Oh no! I mean, it's a really difficult question, Hans. So, I mean, until now they've been that those are the ones before were the easy ones. So now the question is, what is your favorite food or dish?
Favorite food? Oh, yeah. I didn't think of that, but typically I like, let's say, foreign foods, other cuisines, spicy. So
Oriental or
both, but also Italian food. Because I lived in Parma for 5 years, so yeah. So I like a variety of food in different cuisines. Yeah.
Nice.
That is perfect.
Nice. Yeah, Hans, then I will say thank you for your time, your knowledge shared here in this episode. As I said already in the previous question, what kind of things we discussed. I think there's a lot of valuable there's a lot of valuable information for our listeners in that sense, and I hope that people are gonna also like go into a bit of something in your papers, and we are looking for the upcoming research that you also will share with us, because I think you are not. Yeah, there will be probably new projects coming, if I heard.
Yes, so.
So we keep an eye on it. And then I will say thank you.
Okay. You're welcome, guys. And happy to see the outcome.